thank you for joining us tonight. Jo's here to impart some of her wisdom on this subject, and I know that you'll get a lot out of this, and I'll leave it over to Jo. She's a wealth of knowledge and been in this industry or learning this information for a very long time. So enough of me. I'll again thank you for joining. Any questions you have, any questions that you'll have, type them down and we'll then go back through them at the end.
Oh, thank you, Alan. Okay, today is about how to take action and be empowered, and it's to do with human rights, what's going on at the moment, the handling of COVID, vaccinations, the flu vaccination, which is a big part of what's in the news at the moment, where to connect and what you can do. And the way that this webinar got started was simply I'd gone through some of the steps and some of the processes. I knew some of the places to go, people to talk to, and I'd sent some letters in to various politicians and the like. And I'd said to somebody, hey, look, I've stepped through this process. You know, they'd said they were yet to do it. And I said, well, would you like some help? And I actually said that to a couple of people. And the question was posed back to me, instead of me sitting down with, you know, a few people individually, would I like to try and put some of that information into a webinar so that we can all learn together? So, that's how this got started. So I'm not coming from any platform or any particular group or anything like that. I'm exactly like you are. I've just been around some of the stuff for a little bit longer, and I've done some of the bits and pieces so I can share that. Now, I understand that the people coming in tonight have varied backgrounds. So we've got people who are only just now raising questions about this mandatory flu vaccination, whereas we've got other people and they have been on a number of these platforms and know what I'm talking about, but they may not have been to well, I won't say all of them, because I've got, by no means have I got a comprehensive across the board of everything, but they may, you know, not know about more than just a few. So what I'm going to do is, the first part of tonight, I'm going to just talk a little bit about the basics, about the vaccination, about what's happening in the political world, and then I'm going to the second half of this, I'm going to step into, well, what it is that you can do. Okay, so the first thing I just wanted to start with was a little bit of an overview about what we've been going through in the last few years. So, you know, some people might be coming into this just because of the mandatory flu vaccinations at the moment, but I just wanted to step back and give people a little bit of a history and then where we're headed. So it started off with no jab, no pay legislation. And when that came in, it removed family tax benefits for children and in fact for adults, because it applies to people up to 20 years of age if they were not totally up to date with the vaccination schedule. And when that legislation came in, it was only at the last moment that it moved from being just to do with preschoolers to, in fact, they made it up to 20 years of age. So that was an example of how we were divided up. And that's something that I want to speak to a little bit about today. So we looked at it as a, you know, a lot of people with young children were heavily involved in this change of legislation. However, we didn't know that it was actually going to affect, for example, kids in primary school that were going to before school care, after school care, vacation care and things like that. So that kind of got thrown in at the last minute. It's like, whoa, it just got extended, but people didn't know about it. Now that was followed by no jab, no pay, which has actually come in at the state level, and so far there's 4 states that have done that. And this is another way that legislation creep tends to happen, where it happens in one state, and so people in alternative states don't realise that they can, or don't feel like they can do anything because it's not in their backyard, or then they can't say, hey, I'm a voter in that area. And then the next state uses the first state as a premise to then bring it into their state, and so it's a little bit of a domino effect. So this is kind of what's going on with the flu vaccinations at the moment, is there's picking and choosing who to target first, and then it rolling out and affecting more and more people. So for example, nurses and doctors are affected, as we all have been aware recently, aged care. So For people that don't know, that's people working in aged care need to be vaccinated to be able to go to work. Visitors, people visiting their relatives, are in the same condition, and even people that are tradespeople that are just going there to work can be affected. It was also, as part of this legislation, highly recommended it be applied to childcare workers, to children in childcare, and this is your after school, before school vacation care as well, and then to parents and the parents collecting the children. So hence there's a whole lot of adults and there's children the flu vaccination was never applying to them before. I believe that it was looked at as being mandatory, and then that got changed to highly recommended, but I'm not entirely sure. All I know is that the way it states at the moment is it's highly recommended. Now, under this flu vaccinations is actually only allowed under the emergency powers that are in place at the moment. And so in Queensland, and I'm just using that because it's the only data I know, the emergency powers are meant to run out towards the end of the month. However, there is a clause that those powers can be extended. If they are running out, that means people can do things like take extended leave, holiday, etc., and see if they can wait it out. Having said that, once the emergencies powers run out, whether they're extended or not, the question is what happens then. And I think that is a lot of why we're getting very involved. A lot of people are taking action because the rhetoric is that these requirements will be continued even though they will not be covered by this emergency powers legislation. I have been told of an aged care facility that has already sent out a communication to their to people wanting to visit relatives, that not only do they have to have the flu vaccination to visit them now, but they're going to continue that out beyond the emergency powers once they have finished. However, there are also aged care facilities saying, we don't know what's happening. So there is confusion about that, and that is something that we really want to, work towards having it once those emergency powers finish, so that is the end of this at the moment. So if people make a lot of noise and take a lot of action, that is a stopping point. Now, as you may have seen from the news, no jab, no play has now been brought in for adults. And this is predominantly to do with the Queensland Government Chief Health Officer, Dr. Jeanette, and I've just realised that I can't see the rest of my slide because it's covered by everyone, so you can see her surname. Now, she pressured the NRL to ban players refusing the flu shot, and I've just seen today that she's now said she will not allow anyone in the NRL to, the Queensland government, I don't know if it was her in particular, has said they will not allow anyone from the NRL to come across the state line into Queensland if they have not had their flu shot. Now, when I first wrote this, I actually had the thought, this is setting a precedence for children. You know, what's the bet this is going to be extended to the junior clubs? I wrote that and then had to go back and rewrite this and say, well, actually, it's already happened. There are already junior clubs out there saying that children will not be able to play in the season if they have not had their flu vaccination. So this is getting out of hand, where entities that have no authority whatsoever are actually taking on board this. And so this is a real legal and a legal issue. Now, having said that as well, I just want to add that I've been informed that Coles Australia Post and Mitre 10 are now recommending that their employees get flu shots. It's happening in the banking and IT sectors as well as keeping into the construction centres, some universities, and I've even heard of people being pressured by legal firms to go and get this flu vaccine. And so I put down what next, because you can just see there's creep, there's creep, there's creep. Now, in case you're not aware of the background, the pharmaceutical industry has made it absolutely clear, and this is well and truly documented, that they are after the adult vaccination market because it is worth many times more, because there are many more people, than the child vaccination market. And to give you an idea of the scope of this, children are currently, this is in Australia, receive 49 injection doses by the time they reach adulthood. So if they end up doing a catch-up schedule for adults, which is now what children, you know, have been placed on, that's 49 injections that we have to have, on top of a mandatory flu vaccination that could be on an annual basis. And this is where I say to kids, if the flu vaccination or influenza vaccination is added to the schedule, they're up to 67 shots by the time they reach adult. And then even more scarily, I suppose, is that there are over 250 more vaccinations in the pipeline, which is just mind-blowing. So now, just for people that are new, I wanted to touch very briefly on the ingredients, some of the key ingredients in the flu vaccination. And I made certain that we're only talking of flu vaccination rather than across all vaccinations. So actually, my first point is about the effectiveness. And while this conversation tonight has nothing to do with the effectiveness of vaccines, because that's a whole different conversation and you can spend a long time down the rabbit hole on that one, I did want to point out the well-known fact that there are thousands of flu strains and the flu vaccination only applies to 3 or 4 of those strains, depending on which vaccine shot that you get. Now, within the ingredients, there's egg protein is used to grow it. There are what they call adjuvants. So if somebody hasn't heard of this, these are added to a vaccine to stimulate your immune response so that you respond to something that is a dead virus. And aluminium is one of the key adjuvants that's used, and unfortunately, it is a known neurotoxin. It can cross the blood-brain barrier. Particularly macrophages tend to help get it across, and it's been linked to Alzheimer's and dementia. Formaldehyde is another ingredient that's added, a strong disinfectant, which is a carcinogen, and polysorbate 80 is a preservative, which can lead to anaphylactic reactions. Whoops, wrong way. Okay. Now, serious side effects. This is straight from the safety leaflet from one of the vaccines. So just quickly, it leads to nerve inflammation. It can lead to weakness of facial muscles, visual issues, fainting, dizziness, tingling or numbness of hands or feet. And I mean, if you have even just something like tingling or numbness, it might sound small, but if that goes on and on for a long time, it is really disruptive, and it's just a very small thing. Paralysis, Guillain-Barré syndrome is very high, you know, very highly correlated with this. This is a well-known side effect, and seeing someone paralyzed from this is quite heartbreaking. Fits, convulsions, severe anaphylactic reactions, and reduction in platelets, swollen glands in the neck, arm, point, or groin. One of the things that people sometimes think about vaccines is that it's a 1 in a million side effect. Very, very few people are being affected. But I think nowadays we realize with the internet, with the communications that are going out there, that there are a lot more people being affected than what we colloquially thought of. From one of the information sheets from one of the flu vaccinations say it ranges between 1 in 1,000 and 1 in 10,000. It's well away from 1 in a million. Okay. Now, this was something that I thought was very relevant for what's happening today. Of all the vaccinations to be made mandatory, the flu vaccination is the one that I am most surprised about. Hang on, I'm just going to try and shrink this down. Okay, the one that I am most surprised about. And that is because it has a higher risk of causing respiratory virus infections, including the coronavirus. It can cause increased risk of acute respiratory illness and can affect the recipient's or the person's ability to recover. With the knowledge we now have of what's going on, this can prevent someone from mounting an effective response to it. So basically, you've got more of a risk of getting the coronavirus. You've got more of a risk of getting something that might look like the coronavirus, might not, but then may be counted as the coronavirus, depending on whether people are fully tested or whether it's by symptoms. And then you've got the issue of the cytokine storm and things going to pot, for want of a better word, and that is more likely if you've had the flu vaccination. And there's many people speaking out about it at the moment, saying, out of all the things that you can do, the flu vaccination is the one that is the least you want to be doing, simply from its relationship to do with respiratory virus infections. So, and the question has been posed, are we going to be seeing a huge outbreak of COVID-19 and or other respiratory illnesses in the Australian population after we've had this huge increase in flu vaccinations? So, food for thought. Now, sometimes people think, that's okay, we can be exempt. And hang on. And the problem is that there aren't many exemptions that are available anymore. So just prior to the no jab, no pay legislation came in, they actually took away conscientious exemptions, then they took away religious exemptions, and then many of the various medical exemptions were removed. They created a new form and it became very, very difficult for people to get exemptions. There are no exemptions for chronic conditions. So autoimmune diseases, cancer, heart conditions, diabetes. There are comments that say, oh, you might want to check with your doctor or so-and-so because it might not be a good idea, but the only allowable exemption is for the influenza vaccine is if somebody has had an anaphylactic shock to the vaccine having had it before or to the ingredients in it. And they actually state quite clearly allergic reactions to eggs don't count. It has to be an anaphylactic shock. Now, a couple of stories I have heard about, and one, you know, just because it's my particular interest is autoimmune diseases, I've already heard of 2 people with rheumatoid arthritis that have suffered massive flare-ups immediately after having the newly mandated flu vaccination. One of them wasn't on any medication whatsoever. And this is not surprising, considering autoimmune diseases result from the adaptive part of your immune system, the part that deals with antibodies, being overstimulated. And so the vaccinations stimulate that very part of the immune system that's overactive. And if you ever have a flare-up or something like that, it's not necessarily something that goes on, you know, goes away after a day or 2. It can go on for months and months and months. I've also been told of 12 severe adverse effects in one area of healthcare in one area, with one of them having severe anaphylactics. And this was within the first couple of days after the 1st of May and this becoming mandated. Now, I have seen that there is a possibility, and this is where we're, you know, I certainly don't know the ins and outs. I just want to let people know that there is a possibility that some states' legislation may allow a doctor's letter certifying a medical contraindication. And what this might mean is your doctor's letter can, in fact, be allowed that says, look, I've got a good reason, and you know, I can be you know, not forced to or not required to have it. Now, the conversation about this and information about this is on the AVN's website, and I will be talking about them very shortly. But there is a blog called Avoiding Temporary Aged Care Flu Vaccine Mandate, and I highly recommend that if this is something that is affecting you, to go and have a look at that blog and take it further from there. Now, I also wanted to just mention about reporting adverse vaccine reactions, because this is this is the follow through. If many people are having this, and people that wouldn't normally have it with chronic diseases, the likelihood of adverse reactions is actually quite high. And apparently you've got to report it, or you're meant to report it within 28 days. Don't let that stop you reporting it, but you know, if something happens, please try and do it as soon as possible. Now, you can do this direct to the TGA, but even better, the AVN, the Australian Vaccination-risks Network, will help you with this. They have a vaccination report form, and they will forward it to the TGA on your behalf, and they can then monitor and get a sense of how many people are reporting adverse reactions. So I highly recommend going to the AVN website and just search on vaccine reaction report form, and you'll be able to fill that in. And this can be anything from a sore arm, fever, to disability, paralysis, death, anything. Always err on the side of caution of reporting, as in report, even if it doesn't seem big at the start, because you never know, it might turn into something more. So, report, when in doubt, report. Now, this is the Australian Vaccination-risks Network. And I'm just going to flick onto a web page for a minute. Okay, so this is the website, so you know what it is when you find it. Okay, and up here we've got information. And if you want to know about what's in vaccines or what's in diseases or why vaccines are needed for some diseases or not needed, or what the history is, or whether I should have a polio vaccine or not, or anything like that, there's a ton of information here. Vaccine and diseases is a great starting point. There is also the AVN blog, and this is where you will find not just articles, but they have under the wire episodes. So these are weekly video recordings of the news, and they'll do interviews and things like that. This one is actually really good that I'm showing. It's he's very humorous. But they are quite specific to what is going on in Australia. So this is one of the reasons that, hang on, I'm just going back to learning how to drive here. This is one of the reasons that I put this first, is the AVN is our voice in Australia. And I think to connect in and be a part of making a difference with this mandatory vaccinations and with our rights, the AVN is our voice, and we need to support them. And they are a great first port of call for information. So the website is avn.org.au. I recommend subscribing to the newsletter. In fact, with everything that I'm just going to say, subscribe to the newsletter or whatever they ask you to do, because if they get taken down, it means they can communicate with you if they switch to another platform. Become a member. It's $25. It's not very much, but they are it is run by a small group of volunteers, and that money can be put to extremely good use. So, if you can donate, even if you can't donate become a member and donate $25, donate something. But if there is one thing I would say, put some money into what you're doing. These guys need our support. They have a Facebook page, and you can click on the that from their website, and you will then get posts and updates, as well as keeping an eye on their blog and getting updates from their newsletter about the under the wire reports. Now, there's two blogs that you can go and look up. One of them I've mentioned, the Avoiding Temporary flu vaccine mandates, which I said was to do with that letter from a doctor, and the other one is an influenza vaccination refusal letter that's more to do with if you work in a place that is requiring you to have a vaccination. So these are starting points. They aren't necessarily things that will get exactly what we want at the moment, but they are great places to start doing anything. So go and look on that blog, just type in influenza and those two things will come out. Okay, now the next one I wanted to talk about, I put these guys next because they're just the easiest way of taking action. Now, Healthier Communities Foundation is a website that's recently been set up by Alana. She represented the IMOP seat in Queensland last year, and I'm going to come on to who IMOP is, but they're a political party. When you go onto this website, you can go to the Contact Us page, enter your name and email, and advise that you give permission for your details to be entered into their database. That means they can contact you if for any reason they're taken down. The link here that I've got, which we will put this in comments, or we'll post it with a recorded video, the healthiercommunities.foundation/send a letter influenza vaccine may increase the risk of coronavirus infection, is a direct link. I couldn't see that on their website, so you actually had to have this link to go and do this letter. But it is an awesome letter. The really good thing is that it's, now let's just see if I can bring this up. Yeah, here's their web page. And when I click on that link, it takes me to here. And the really good thing is the letter's written for you. All the people that are going to be contacted, it's all done for you. You simply put in your details, and it's a really well written letter. So I highly recommend going through and have a read of what it says. because this is giving you a whole lot of great information. And then down the bottom, you can add a personal message, and then just review, letter, and send. So that is one of the easiest ways I can think of to take action and make a difference. Okay, now the next thing just to touch on is the IMOP, the Informed Medical Options Party. And this is just to let you know that there is a political party dedicated to protecting the rights of Australians to refuse medical procedures and products. They have some key policies that, from what I can see, look pretty darn good. Representing the people, not large corporations, supporting green energy, stopping the poisoning of food and the environment, stopping the effect on our environment from 5G and GMOs, supporting natural medicines, natural therapies, natural birthing choices, and stopping fluoride. Now, you can go to their website, imoparty.com, and register as a member and support their voice in Parliament, and you can join their Facebook page. They also have a parliamentary petition. Actually, this only just came out, I think, today. Yes, it was. This I've only just added to the slides today. So you click on this link and you can, there is a petition that's going to Parliament. So this is not a change.org petition. This is so that someone can actually table this. So we need, I think they need as many of these signed as possible by the 30th of May. So if you can please get onto that and sign that. Again, something very, very simple and a lot more effective than, you know, just change.org type stuff. Now, push back against mandatory medication in Australia. And this is some of the story from this I found quite funny. So if you go onto the AVN website, there is an Under the Wire special with Melissa Bruce, who is a wonderful person who's just decided that each and every day she's going to do something, and she's going to do something to make a difference. And in the process, she shared it with other people. Someone or some other people have helped her set up a website. It's become even easier so that we can all do, you know, something. Now, in this Under the Wire thing, she actually mentioned how she stumbled across a bit of legislation or whatever it was that explained that she could table a petition in Parliament. And so she wrote this all up, made sure it ticked all the boxes so that it was a vaccinated versus, requesting a vaccinated versus unvaccinated study be done. And that ended up reaching 14,000 signatories in a very, very short space of time. It has been tabled, and it will be something that Parliament has to address when they come back to sitting. So it's more of a case of watch the space, and we have no idea what will happen. But if you want to see what's behind that, I highly recommend watching the Under the Wire special. Now, this is the ydnassits.wixsite.com3693 is the website that's been set up to help everyone do this. So when I first got started, I was sent things by email. Now it's there so that, you know, it steps you through nice and easily. There are 2 letters to write and to email. One is to repel the no jab, no pay legislation. And the reason it was about this, and this is why I gave the history in the first place, is because this is a legislation that, because it went through, it's been easier and easier to add more and more amendments. So if this gets repelled, it's no longer a building block for other legislation to then be based on. The other letter is basically requiring senators to raise or take forward the human rights issues that are raised in the letter with the Attorney General. And I believe this is occurring, you know, it has been taken to the Attorney General, but the more letters, the better. The key message, I think, from Melissa is do something every day. Write a letter, make a phone call, give someone a flyer, exercise, and protest. You know, you've seen people, or you might have seen people walking around, you know, doing the exercise with something written on their short. You know, talk with a stranger, you know, if it comes up in conversation. So this was the website here. Oops. Just so that you know what it looks like. So push back against attempted mandatory medication in Australia. There's a bit of a home page, a take action place, what to do with replies, Oh, and flyers. Okay, so that's a new one. So these things are growing all the time. Keep an eye on them, keep watching them. Okay, now, next. My Will Australia. Again, this one is something that is simple. My Will Australia is .com is a website you can go to, and there is a letter. All you do is put your name, sign it, I think, and get 2 people to witness it, and they don't even need to sign. They just need to write their name and date or something. So if you have any questions about how to fill out the letter, it's on their website. Just go to the frequently asked questions thing. It is a really, really simple letter to do. But if we reach 0.51% of the population, which is only 100,000 signatures, we have a powerful legal mandate to convene a grand jury to invest political corruption. So I have no idea how this will work. I don't know that much about it, but I just figure if there's any chance of any investigation into political corruption, that would be fantastic. As I said, it's so simple and so easy to do. I'm not too sure if I brought their website up. Let's have a look. Yeah, there it is, My Will, My Country. So up the top here, up the top here is download a letter. Frequently asked questions if you want to know what it is, and a lovely little video that explains what you're doing. Honestly, it won't take you very long, and you'll have, another thing that you've done. And as I say, just, as Melissa was saying, just do one thing every day or every couple of days. Now, this is the one that a lot of people may be familiar with. It is a Facebook group, a private group that's been started up. In fact, when I first started writing this, it had 10,000 members to date. A few days later, it was up to 21, and it's probably well beyond that by now. So it is growing at an exponential rate, and the reason is people want to do something. So find this on Facebook. I'm not going to bring up a picture of them because it is a private group, so I want to respect that privacy. Look up Empowered Lifestyle. This here is a picture of, what it looks like on Facebook. For letters and actions to take back your rights for mandatory vaccination. There is a units tab on the left-hand side. Click on that. It steps you through what to do. One of the first things is provide your email so they can contact you outside of Facebook if they get taken down. And their key message is it's all about consent. So if you say nothing, then that is giving consent. If you send in, and this is what they've got, a series of letters to send in to government to say that we do not consent to their actions, alerting the Attorney General about human rights issues, and further letters will be coming out about access to aged care facilities and 5G. So this is somewhat also a protection for you and your family, so that you are standing up and saying, hey, I don't, not just I don't agree with this, but I don't consent to this, and then that can give you a lawful standing or legal standing or lawful or one of those words later down the track. And this is all new to me, what they've been talking about, and I'm just really been impressed with what they're doing and grateful for what the guys there have been doing and sharing with everyone so that we can make a difference. And I'm just trusting in what they're doing and following the process the same as everyone else, and what will happen will happen. Now, this used to be horribly complicated, and this is what I was originally asked to help with. Was, I said I'd step through all these letters. There was a lot of letters to write. There were different places to fill in your information. You had to go through and possibly change the letters if it was for a family or if it was for an individual. There was a little bit of confusion over some things, and it was just, a bit complicated. Now they have simplified it, so you can still use the manual process, and that's free, but I highly recommend donating the $5 and they do the letters for you. It's all automated, and it is so well worth it because you save that money in postage alone, because now you only need one A4 registered envelope, whereas we had to send many to many different addresses, all these different registered envelopes. So those alone would have added up to well more than $5. when you click on the link, so this is your units, you go to there and there's a bit of a video and explanation, and you click on the link to say, let's do it automated. You go to a group called Solutions Empowerment, and they are a lot of the people that the Empowered Lifestyle Revolution has got their information from, and has said that these are a wonderful group of people. Now, the Solutions Empowerment website will, or how it's all linked, will step you through what you need to do, but you will need the A4 registered envelope to proceed with it, because they need that registered number. So go to the post office, get your A4 registered envelope. Once you've been you've been approved to join Empowered Lifestyle Revolution, go to the units tab, click on the link, have a look at the information, pay the $5, and let them send all the letters for you. So you just print them off, sign them, and send them. It's just so nice and simple. Now, for people, anyone listening to this is in New Zealand, I just want to let you know that a template process is currently being worked on that's specific for New Zealand. They'll release it as soon as it's available. So if you're in New Zealand, you can join this group as well, or you can apply to join this group. Okay, and they are growing. They are doing more things. It's not just one series of letters. So keep on the Facebook page, because new things are coming out all the time. Okay, Make Australia Healthy Again. This is just a shout out to Solihan Millen, and I have no idea whether I pronounced this correctly, but here's a pensioner who's successfully filed 2 current appeal cases in the High Court, and this is standing up just to say that the no jab, no pay should not be allowed to continue. I think part of it is to do with the fact that he's a pensioner. Something happens with fees, which makes it much easier for him to take it forward than for a person who's not a pensioner. So he's very intelligent from what I've seen and heard of him, and he is doing a fantastic job standing up and taking us forward on our behalf. So there's no particular action to take here, but it's just to A, make you aware, and B, to give Solihan some support. So if you go there in the contact us section, send a message of thank you or acknowledgement, and give your permission to be added onto their database, that would be great, because that way, if they need to reach you with anything to do with these appeal cases, or to let you know what's going on, that's a way of connecting. Okay. Know your rights. Now, this is getting up to speed on knowing your rights. So this is if you want to do a deeper dive. This is if you want to go into some of the things that are sitting behind these letters. So you read these letters, some of them you're kind of going, what is this about consent? Or what is this about my will? Where is all this coming from? What does it make? And there's a huge story behind this. In fact, there's a lot of people working on this, and I know I haven't even come close to touching on all the players that are involved in this. I mean, I'm coming across their websites every day now. But this is a place that if you want to do a deeper dive, I put it in there so that you know it is available. It is on, it's on a lot more things than just about mandatory vaccination. It is about rights across the political spectrum. However, I wanted to mention they have got a vaccination menu, and there's letters you can send in with regards to no jab, no pay. If you do go to this website, to get a little bit of an idea of what's going on, I just wanted to show you this. There's a video there. Here's the Know Your Rights page. And if I page down, yeah, there's a bit of an intro. But this video here, frequently unanswered questions. And it's really quite entertaining. And there's this very interesting story of someone that was importing a car, and whether they should or should not be paying import tax on it or custom duties, and who in fact was asking them to pay custom duties. And it's entertaining, it's fascinating, and it opens a whole can of worms. The first time I read it, I saw it, I was like, really? No, surely not. That's not. But so, if you want to have a look at something, you know, that's a little bit behind the scenes, have a look at that. It's a great starting point. And I believe they're also, some of the people here are part of the Great Australian Party. So I don't know much about that, but that's just showing there's a link with them as well. Now, one of the last things I wanted to touch on, this is if you want to go much deeper dive, this is the moot court of, it's another way of saying Australia without using the word Australia. And it ties in, there's two things here actually. The moot court, which is a Facebook group, which you can go and join, or it's a page, join, can't remember now, go and have a look. And the other one is the common law courts. And these guys are, the Australia arm is working with the common law courts. And this is going into the difference between common law, which is your rights as a man and woman, and legislation. And legislation is what we're all being affected by at the moment. And that is what is apparently applies to what is known as a dead entity. And then there's various other terms that are used. But it is the entity that is created when a birth certificate is created for you, and then reinforced with your driver's license and other various paperwork documentations. But there is another court that, or law, that sits above legislation called the common law. And this is where these guys are working. So this is new to me. I'm by no means saying, hey, this is really good because I know all about it. It's more a case of I'm going, this is fascinating, you know, and if someone wants to look a little bit further and deeper into things, pay attention to this. Now, there's also something that I wanted to mention. This is about signing up to the common law court. So this is how we stand with the weight of the people behind us when we come up with issues in court rather than on our own. And you can go to the commonlawcourt.com and you can submit a declaration of birth and get a registered number so that you are now a member, or you can be represented by the common law court. And then you can claim ownership of the fictional legal title attached to you, which is regarding this, what happens when a birth certificate is attached to you. So that might seem a bit strange if you've never heard anything about that, but if you go to the website, it will explain a little bit about it. If you go to this Facebook page, there are a couple of clips on it. One is this gentleman here speaking, and that provides that's a great, I don't know, it's about 20 minutes, half an hour or something, bit of background about it. There's a little, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 minute little skit thing, which also will help to explain these different entities. And then for an even deeper dive, I came across this webinar with these guys talking. So it doesn't actually show it, but this guy here is part of this conversation. This guy at the top is a Scottish guy, and he's been, I think, played a major part in setting up the common law court. Fascinating to listen to. A really strong Scottish accent, which is quite fun to listen to as well. And this is not for anyone wanting to try and come in and say, okay, what does all this mean? Lay it out to me nice and clear. It's listening in on somebody else's conversation more than anything, and then finding a whole lot of gems in what they're speaking about. So out of all the things we've said today, we're now getting so deep, and you've got, only so much time on your hands. But if, you get there and you want to have a nosy, I highly recommend it. All these 3 links are on this Facebook page. Now, part of what I picked up in this conversation in this webinar is the common law has sent notices of declaration to various prime ministers, premiers and presidents around the world on the 30th of April, including to Australia and New Zealand, with 30 days to challenge it. Now, it may well be ignored and thrown in the bin, but it is giving them an option to respond to it. Otherwise, it can be used going forward as a legal thing. I can't remember the exact words, but and it has been recognised, I think somewhere in Queensland it was recognised through the action somebody's taken. The common law court was actually recognised, and that sets a precedence for things. So they've got 30 days to challenge it, but in a matter of weeks, the common law court is going to be instigating 40 or 50 cases across the world, across multiple countries, for crimes against the people, such as 5G and vaccinations. And the way that they are doing it, they are picking certain subjects, and then they are going to instigate these cases in more than one country at the same time, so that it is not one area, one person, or one section of the world apart from everyone else. It's things being stood together, and in fact it can actually mean that countries are being played off against each other. So as I say, this is brand new information to me, and but when I came across it, I was like, hey, wow, there are some people doing some really cool stuff. Okay, that's very technical, I know. Okay, now I just wanted to leave you, most of the stuff I've been talking about is how to take action. This is not a take action page, but it's just if people weren't aware of it, there is a really good show that is run on a weekly basis. It's called The High Wire with Del Bigtree. They have a Facebook page and a website. This is independent news. So this is a news show, or medical news show, that is totally independent and has been well ahead of the curve of what is being reported about what's going on at the moment, you know, well and truly ahead. They're reporting the stuff that hasn't hit mainstream media for obvious reasons, but even when mainstream media does talk about it, these guys have been talking about it way before. In fact, I think they're setting a bit of a precedent, you know, they're setting the scene for the others to follow. He's very entertaining and interesting to listen to as well, and it's just a really good show. So if you hadn't heard of it, thehighwire.com, I highly recommend it, and watching the videos. Go on the Facebook page and you'll see them get posted up. And just to remind you as well that the other weekly show is the Under the Wire from the AVN, because that is specific to Australia. Okay, final thoughts. And never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. And although it can seem like an awful lot is being pushed through with a very serious agenda at the moment, there is also an awful lot of people that are standing up and doing things that, you know, not many people are even aware of. And it is with multiple actions around the world, with everyone doing a little something, that things can change. So ask yourself, if not now, when? And if not you, who? We're at a choice point in history. What we do now sets the scene for what will follow. So this is about taking action and feeling empowered. You'll be amazed if you do something, how much more empowered you feel. You don't feel like you're overwhelmed. You don't feel like, oh, I can't do anything. You make a difference and you feel better from it. Change is a good thing, and change of the sort that we need at the moment comes from the bottom up. So that's kind of, I think, all that I wanted to cover tonight. And I'm just trying to get to everyone. Tell them about me. And now just open it up for questions.
Okay, there was a couple of questions back here, Jo.
Okay.
One of them was, is there any research that shows there is an increased risk of getting coronavirus, or is it a perceived risk?
No, there's very, very specific studies. And that's a great point. I'm glad that person asked that question, because I've just realized I haven't actually spoken to that when I was talking. I did in my practice versions in my head, but I didn't actually do it tonight. When you go and look at the letters that have been written, when you go to these sites, a lot of this information is in the letters that you will be sending into government. So it's very specifically laid out there. So every single thing that I've put in here has come from something, has got studies or links or research to back it up. So nothing I have written is hearsay.
Okay, thank you. Now there's another one here. Well, that wasn't a question, it was just a statement that her daughter, a nursing student in Western Australia, had a major anaphylactic shock or attack, anaphylaxis attack to the flu vaccine last year. She stopped breathing and became unconscious in less than 20 minutes. By God's grace, she took the vaccine and then Uber and went to sit at the emergency room at the hospital.
Can I explain?
Yep.
She was studying nursing there, and there was like a whole back and forth with the college because they were forcing her to have the vaccine, when a few doctors said they weren't sure if they could give it to her or not. So she decided to go and get the vaccine at her own risk at the GP. But I actually demanded, because we've got delayed anaphylaxis in the family, and both my children have had reaction to vaccines in a different country. So I demanded that she actually goes and sits at the emergency room. And she went, and we never thought she would get a reaction. I thought, but just stay there for about 4 hours to make sure you don't get a delayed reaction. And she took her Uber, and she went, and she sat there with a boyfriend that's now her husband, that she married an Australian in Western Australia. And she was telling the nurse, and yes, she was telling the nurse why she was waiting there. And while she was talking to the nurse, not even in 20 minutes, she was unconscious.
That is, thank goodness. Thank goodness she's there.
I've got both children have had delayed reactions, delayed anaphylaxis reactions. That's why I demanded that she goes to the emergency room.
Mm.
So what they've said at the moment is if you've had an anaphylactic reaction to the vaccine, having had it already, which is kind of like insane, or to the ingredients in it. So if you know, coming up against this issue again, I mean, she's clearly can get a medical exemption. But for the rest of the
medical
family,
exemption, Sonia, but now they got new ones because they say it's from the egg, and now they got new ones with they're developed in the dog. They're developed in the dog cells. So now they're saying maybe she should try those.
I was not aware of that. That would be something I would be talking to the AVN about. Well, the first thing is, so did her or you or anyone in the family, you know, do the adverse reactions? Did you put anything in about that? Did you submit that there was an adverse reaction?
She didn't. Because she's a foreign student in Australia. Now she's married an Australian also student. She actually didn't. I mean, I live in South Africa. The reason I joined the AVN and a lot of I'm in South African groups against vaccines, but because of her, I've joined now the Australian groups because when she reacted so badly, I've just been concerned.
Wonderful. I mean, that's the first thing. I would actually go and fill in that form on the AVN website. Even though it's after the fact, it's letting them know what's going on. The second thing is that creates a bit of a paper trail, which is always really important. And you can reach out to the AVN. This is why I say these are the group of people that are for us, and speak to them about the circumstances going forward. And the other thing is that they have just created a vaxxed, they've just finally managed to buy a vaxxed bus. So I don't know if anyone knows about the vaxxed bus that is in America, but they went around gathering people's stories so that they can be communicated and people realize this is not 1 in a million or 1 in a zillion sort of, you know, occurrence. It's happening to lots of people, you know, many times. So, you know, you may want to, or it was daughter, was it? Your daughter?
Yes, my daughter.
Yeah, your daughter. She, you know, it may be something for her or for you to actually say, well, we're happy to, you know, if the Vax tour, because they're going to go on tour soon when we can actually move about, you might want, you know, they might want to come and see you and interview you or her about what happened. Because the more
not me,
people...
I'm too far. They'll have to interview me. I'm in a different continent here.
Oh, yes, you're in South Africa. Okay. So
I'm in South Africa.
Okay.
Now they're in heavy lockdown.
Yeah, we terribly locked down. They beat up people. They went from lockdown 5 to 4, and people are being beaten up by walking around. They all have to wear masks. They're going from house to house, forcing people to test, forcing prophylaxis. We're in really trouble. We're in big trouble here. And my son's allergic to 55 different things. He actually met Ellen at a launch in South Africa. We met Ellen.
Okay.
That's how we got in touch with him.
So you know Lenore.
My son is allergic to 55 different things, and his Jewish professor actually suspects a reaction from a vaccine he was given at school. Because we stopped vaccinating at 18 months because he had extreme allergies.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
I'm so sorry to hear all of that.
And now there's another question. If someone has had an anaphylactic shock and they're known to get issues with vaccinations, are they then allowed to go to work?
They can, as far as I understand, they can get a medical exemption. So they can actually get a medical exemption from it, saying they have had an anaphylactic shock. But the anaphylactic shock is to either having had the flu vaccination before, or it's to the ingredients in the vaccination. So this is what the lady was just talking about before, is if they've changed the ingredients in the vaccination, what happens. But the thing is, there is more than just one flu vaccination. I'm not aware, I mean, I've taken the information straight from the site about one of the Australian flu vaccinations, and this is something you've got to be careful of as well, is that there are different things happening with different flu vaccinations around the world. So, for example, the ingredients and what they do in the US is not the same here in Australia. So as I delved into it, that was one of the things that I became aware of. So the question, as I say, the question goes back to what have they had an anaphylactic shock to? And can it be classified as either the ingredients in it or to the vaccination before? And then, yes, my understanding is they can get a medical exemption. That is quite clearly stated. That's the one that you can get. But it's still, as you can see, it's quite limiting. I mean, if you've got an anaphylactic response to peanuts, it's not going to do anything.
Oh, I was just saying that one of our friends who works in a nursing home, she couldn't even get a reprieve or continue her job, even if she did have an anaphylactic shock to it. The rules were that if you don't have a vaccine, you can't work here. Whether you're exempt or not, you just can't work there.
Well, that's the one part of the legislation that is very clear. So, again, we're having issues with people stepping outside the bounds of what the legislation covers. And as I say, there is an issue around that. But I'm really surprised that should have. I'm surprised that has happened, because there are those medical exemptions. But it applies to so few people.
So then,
but normally it's other exemptions people are trying to get. They're trying to say, hey, look, I've had a really bad reaction to, because this is what I'm certainly hearing about, I've had a really bad reaction to another vaccination, you know, not a flu vaccination. So I know I don't want to have one to do with this because there are similarities between it. And that's just being ignored. You know, that's not applicable. Or someone, as I say, that has chronic diseases, autoimmune issues and things like that. And they are, you know, they're not being taken into account at all. And because they're not just going over to, you know, this is not just to workers, this is to people visiting, they're getting a huge cross-section of society. So if it was just workers, you're unlikely to find a lot of people working that have chronic diseases. But because it's people now visiting elderly parents in aged care, a lot of the people that are visitors being fairly old, you know, in the older age group, then a lot of those people can have those chronic diseases and issues. So I expect there's going to be unfortunately, a much higher level of adverse events than we would normally be seeing with people going to get the flu vaccination, because the people are going that wouldn't normally get them.
Yeah. How many of those vaccines that you know of in Australia have the MRC5 in them, which is the aborted fetal tissue, which means you become a bit of a cannibal in a way if you're taking on that into the blood? How many would have that, do you know?
Good question. I don't know. But the whole point is I know where to go to find out, and that is to go to the AVN website, go to information, and go through each of the vaccinations. So if you want to find out about what's in vaccinations, that is a really great tool to go to.
Can you type that in the comments?
But the comments will disappear once we turn this off.
Oh.
Actually, I don't know where the comments will go once I get this recording up. I think the comments will disappear.
Well, I think the main thing is to let people know that all these websites and all these links that I've put on the presentation, the PowerPoint tonight, and I just did that because I wanted to get my thoughts clear on all the things that I wanted to cover. We'll put this with the recorded video. So whether normally on YouTube you've got a description and comments below, we'll make sure that it all goes in there for people to find and access the information.
Mm-hmm. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
I was just going to mention I've been talking to a lady who's studying legislation and law at the moment, and she's going to be sending me some letters
Uh-huh.
that people can use.
Yep.
To give to their employees.
Employees or employers?
Sorry, employers.
Yep.
If they're having, if they've been laid off because they don't get the flu shot or a vaccine or something like that. But from my understanding, what's really important right now is that people take long service leave or their holiday pay right now while we're in the emergency legislation. I don't know if I'm using the right wording.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. People can't do that necessarily. They are being fired, and then there can be an issue about whether that's legal or not, or whatever. It's very difficult. But if they can delay having the vaccination and say that they've got the flu or something like that, and they can't come to work, and just don't tell them. Don't say you're not getting the vaccination, but delay while we're in this emergency situation. Yep.
Because emergency legislation bringing this into play. Because what I've seen, I don't know if it's 100% correct, but there's a section in the Constitution. I'll type it into the messages. It's section 51. XX, sorry about my Kiwi accent, III. I didn't say the other word, I said 51 XXIIA. It's a section in the Constitution, evidently, that is, I'm just reading off something, forced civil conscription is illegal and medical is a reason mentioned by name in the High Court decision of Wong versus Commonwealth. Paragraphs 127 and 128, Justice Kirby deals with this subject. So it violates our constitutional rights, therefore ScoMo does not have the authority to push the anti-freedom measure. So this was something I was again told today by a lady I've met who's studying law, and she's going to send me some stuff with letters that people can give to employers, which actually holds them accountable.
Yep.
So it's just interesting. So this legislation right now is actually just, and people probably don't realise it, but it's just why we're in this emergency situation in actual fact.
Yeah.
And we're being told that people think this is forever, but it's just in the emergency lockdown of the COVID-19 that they're actually mandating it.
Yep. And that's why there's big, huge questions about people, overextending their authority. Things like not just in the in or out, but being extended to junior football clubs, for goodness sake. It's just like, and we're going to do.
What's interesting about this lawyer who told me this was she said her name cannot be seen anywhere. Like she'll be using a fake name and everything, because there's so many people who are in the system who want to speak out, but they're going to be in more secretive way.
Yeah, their hands are tied. Well, because you've got to swear an oath. And this might not be the only reason, but it can be a contributing reason that sometimes what they've got to swear to then ties their hands. But that would be fabulous. There is a letter, one of the letters on the AVN website, one of those links is actually to a letter that does something similar. It won't necessarily be the same thing, because the more the merrier. Just saying there is one up there, for people now, and it might be something that when you get a hold of it, Sarah, to actually make it available to the AVN to share, so that we will.
Sounds awesome. Just said, so I'm sort of like going to be a go-between.
Yeah.
For this lady
who doesn't who doesn't exist. Yeah.
Exactly. The other thing too is if anyone's getting really. I know a lot of people have had anxiety about you know, what the future holds with people coming into their house, taking their children and forcing vaccination and stuff like that, if it ever comes to that. There's also some printouts I've been given that you can put up on your front door,
Mm-hmm.
which basically is what is it? Let me just go back. I've got it in my photos, but basically it protects your, it's I took a screenshot of it today. It's basically just saying no trespassers.
Okay.
And not even the police or anyone can step onto your property once you've got this up on the door or the fence.
Well, perhaps that's something that
I know that's a bit far-fetched, but I know that there are people who are feeling very nervous at the moment about, you know, what could happen.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that was something else I meant to speak to and then I forgot about. But just coming back to that photo that you're looking for, if you give that to Alan and he can put it in the, or you can add it to the comments when it goes live or something like that, you know, that the recording goes up, that'd be great. Yeah, just to talk to that point for everyone listening, the likelihood, and I mean, I don't have a magic wand or anything like that, but the likelihood of someone coming to your door and forcing you to vaccinate is highly, highly, highly unlikely, because they don't need to. They don't need to because they want us to choose to do it. And the way that they choose for us to do it is they take away our benefits, our family tax benefits, our money, our access to people, our access to things, our ability to get driver's licenses, our ability to fly. You know, it's so, this is the whole point. This is a mandated medication of the population, but instead of using force, which is where, you know, it would be very obviously breaking Nuremberg codes and things like that, instead of something that's so obvious, it's like, well, let's just take things away from people until they are asking us for it. And, you know, I think that's the whole thing. So I don't think people need to be afraid of someone coming to their door. It's more a case of you just won't get access to the things you need to live, and then you're forced into that awful position of what do you do? And some people are forced into that position right now because they are desperate to see their loved ones, or they are the only breadwinner at the moment, and you know, they don't know how they'll put food on their table. But fortunately, some of us have the luxury of a little bit more time where we can take action and communicate things with people, and, you know, make noise, make a lot of noise. And just on that point, one of the things that happened with Melissa Bruce's campaign is that when we sent letters around the 1st of May deadline, just before the 1st of May, the last few days before that, he also suggested we all pick up the phone and ring people and just make one phone call a day, so that then all those, you know, it's not just the point of making a phone call, it's the fact that then we're tying up lines and we're letting people know, hey, this is an issue and we hear about it. And it was quite strange picking up the phone first time for me, you know, because I hadn't done anything like that before. And afterwards I was going, oh, this is good. I'm just asking questions. I'm just asking question after question after question about things that I don't think are right or don't make any sense. And it certainly was starting to plant seeds, and it was actually tying up their phones as well. So, okay.
Hey, there is one thing that I'd like to mention, and there is a white elephant in the room, and that white elephant is the part that eventually, I don't know when that's going to happen, but it's on the way. I don't know what year, no one can give a time period, but you won't be able to go into a bank or withdraw money to be able to spend unless you have the vaccination or a certificate of vaccination or some proof that you're safe. So that white elephant comes into that old dusty black book that says something's going to happen that you can't buy and sell unless you have this whatever. So it's according to that book, it's inevitable at some point. Doesn't mean we shouldn't fight it and try and stop it, but it seems like the end game.
And can I talk about this? This is Therese here. I am actually a registered nurse, and I've certainly been in trouble for speaking out for sure. With the game and things, that's obviously why we do need to talk up now. This is the Bill Gates. There's that sort of that whole group of their agenda. But before I go into that, and somebody else might want to cover that, just to go back, there is an actual research paper about influenza that I haven't seen before quoted anywhere else, which is influenza vaccination and respiratory interference among Department of Defence personnel during the... Pardon?
Public.
Oh, sorry, hang on. Keep going.
Can you hear that one? Yeah. Can you hear? Yeah. So there's a research paper that came out in January of this year, influenza vaccination and respiratory virus interference among Department of Defence personnel during the 2017 to 2018 influenza season. It's by WOLFFGG PubMed. So that shows a 37% increase in getting COVID if you have the flu vaccine. So that's massive. Mm-hmm. The other thing we need to be aware of, which is a testimony, we need to tell all of these people very clearly this: there is no statute of limitations on charges of murder. It is that simple. And we already have an evidence to start charging these people with murder and with attempted murder, and the media with collusion for attempted murder. Now, the testimony that came out within the last week or so has been quickly taken down, but we can certainly try to get it back up again. So you need to write this down. The International Tribunal for Natural Justice on April the 29th, 2020, put out a testimony, and this is very important because it is an international tribunal. Its findings went to the White House and went to President Trump. And now the name of that particular sitting was the Corona Emergency Hearing Number 4. Dr. Rashid Buttar and Dr. Judy, how do we say her name? Yeah, Judy B-I-K-O, yeah, that name. So the lovely that particular testimony is mind-blowing. It is brilliant, and given that testimony in a court, you can have people charged with murder and with certainly attempting actual bodily harm based on what Judy and Dr. Buttar says. So this is very, very important. We need to start actually telling the media and telling the doctors and telling everybody, we have it. We do have the evidence. Now, I have, perchance, a lot of contact with people from what you might call the cabal. And I even had one fellow say to me, oh, they don't have any evidence, do they? And I said, oh, no, we don't. And I thought, yeah, I'm lying to you because we have the evidence, and you guys know we have the evidence. So if you look, as you know, Google got taken over recently by Republicans, so they're scared. They're running scared. I have had a helicopter pass over my house 4 times in about 400 seconds today. They came around and did a U-turn down into the street and back again. So they've got my number, so to speak. So I'm doing as much as I can now, because I have had threats. I'm really not kidding on that one. So the other thing that we needed to, the letter that I've written to my local, to Gladys, who's the Premier, and then I wrote it also to the head of our local council, which is where our Premier, I happen to have a house where she lives in her electorate, so that's very useful for me. Mind you, I tried to meet up with them and they refused to speak to me. I did spend 3 years putting in the vaccination program, and I'm hoping to get this letter up so all of you can see it, because I've made a testimony that I was never given any research papers or any information about efficacy to talk to the doctors about. Just the fact sheets, which, as we know, Freedom of Information request on the autism fact sheet done by Peter Little, it came up with 0 sort of research-based evidence for the actual fact sheet in Australia, for the autism fact sheet that I was giving to doctors in the North Sydney region. So we do have their number, as in we can have them charged with murder. And I'm not joking on this, and we need to make sure they're aware of this. And we can have them charged with attempted murder and inflicting actual bodily harm by insisting on the flu vaccine. Now, I happen to work with highly immunosuppressed patients. The thing I tell every single patient every day is, you're not allowed to have any live vaccines. So when I first told a member of parliament that, who was part of this cabal thing, they were spitting chips and really angry at me and wanting to get me sacked straight away. The flu jab they are allowed to have, but the trouble is the adjuvant, as we know, that these people have all got autoimmune diseases. The adjuvant stimulates the autoimmune disease, so that is a whole different issue. And that is where we can get them for inflicting actual bodily harm. There is more than enough evidence. And if we can just get hold of that tribunal sitting somehow and get it downloaded, which we should be able to do, we can use that in court, and we need to tell them. We need to tell the pharmacists, we need to tell the doctors. Just because you don't know the information doesn't mean it's out there, and ignorance is no defence against charges of murder. So, yeah.
Teresa, can I just ask you, that was quite a bit of information to take in there. How can we get hold of what you just said so we can look into it more? And
I can send you guys the letter that I've sent Gladys.
I just wanted to wrap up really by saying that, you know, there's a lot going on at the moment, and a lot of things that can make us quite fearful about what we're heading into. But at the same time, I want everyone to remember that there's a huge amount of people standing up around the world doing things from so many different angles, whether it's to do with the vaccination, or to do with the way COVID's being rolled out, or whether it's to do with the political side of things, or to do with fraud, etc., etc., etc. There's so many people standing up and taking action, that what we think we might be looking at, you know, whether we think Agenda 21 or whatever you want to call it is something we're stepping into, we could be stepping into something totally different, and we could be stepping into something that is a much, much better world. So I think you know, my personal viewpoint is stay away from the fear-based side of things, because for a start it'll make, you know, it'll lower your immune system, but it'll make things, you know, it can be hard to make a difference when you're coming from a place of fear, and instead step into a place of, we're making a difference, we're empowered, we're taking action, and we're doing it with millions of people around the world, and this world is going to be a better place because of all the things that we're doing. And that's it for tonight, all from me.
I just want to do a huge shout out to Joe Douglas. Thank you so much for putting this together. You're really amazing at articulating everything, and I just want to say a huge thank you from all of us.